Hello, welcome. I'm Professor Angela Perger from Simple Ayurveda. I am an Ayurveda practitioner and professor and host of the Simple Ayurveda podcast. I help wellness practitioners and students weave together modern tools with ancient wisdom. So let's dive into this chat about weaving Ayurveda with Germanic healing knowledge. Ayurveda and Germanic healing knowledge. Nothing in this video is medical advice. This discussion is provided for educational purposes only. We are here to discuss connections between Ayurveda and Germanic healing knowledge and simple ways to weave Ayurveda with GHK. So for a brief introduction to Ayurveda, Ayurveda is the world's oldest continually practiced system of wellness. The language that it was originally written in is Sanskrit, which originates from the Indus Valley, what is now modern-day India and the neighboring countries. Vedic philosophy is said to be realized by ancient rishis. The teachings were passed down orally, and no one knows for how long, but probably centuries or longer before being written down. The Vedas are considered timeless teachings and universal truths. They are shashwat, which means unchanging, but how they are applied does adapt to the times. The meaning of Ayurveda. Ayurveda is an ancient system of health that takes into account your unique body, mind, and circumstances. The word ayu or ayur is life, and Veda is wisdom or knowledge. It is part of a larger body of work called the Vedas. In Ayurveda, the human experience is described as 4 parts: mind, body, senses, and soul. And so now we're going to do a brief review of German New Medicine so that we can see how they can be woven together. German New Medicine describes that a biological conflict occurs when there is a conflict shock, a DHS. There are 3 criteria for a conflict shock in GNM or GHK. 1, the event must be unexpected. There's the element of surprise. 2, sudden and acute, perceived as a threat. And 3, isolating, feeling unsupported and alone. What creates a conflict shock is unique to the individual based on many factors, including but not limited to societal conditioning, family patterns, thought patterns, unique experiences, etc. The conflict phase we could describe as fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And the healing phase is when the body begins the repair process. Many symptoms come in the healing phase, but not always. So what I want to look at are potential factors for conflicts. And what I said in the previous slide, what creates a conflict shock is unique to the individual based on many factors, including, but not limited to, societal conditioning. So the society that you live in creates certain conditions that might make your psyche prone to a particular conflict. Family patterns, especially that developed from the womb, birth through childhood. Thought patterns, so the way you think is going to be a contributing factor for whether or not a conflict occurs, and if so, what type of conflict might occur. Your unique experiences, your life experience. What I'm proposing here is that Ayurveda might be a way to explore more nuance in potential factors for conflict, so these things that I just listed, and therefore offer more understanding for resolutions in individuals. So if we can understand why the conflict occurred, we can back up and come to a resolution that makes sense for the individual person. In Ayurveda, we have something called Prakriti. It is based on the 5 elements. All of nature is made up of the 5 elements. This is a map. Other systems use other maps, so this is just the way that Ayurveda describes things. These 5 elements are considered the building blocks of life. The word in Sanskrit is Pancha Mahabhuta. Pancha means five, Maha, great, Bhuta, element. So the five great elements, from subtle to most gross, listed here. Ether, which is space, it's nothingness. It allows for possibility. It is like the room for the other ones to be here. Air, which is also described as wind because air is moving. Fire, warmth, radiance. Water. In Ayurveda, water includes oil, so it's not just the liquid of water, but the water element is including liquid substances. And earth. So you can see here that we go from the most subtle to the gross or densest. These five elements form three vital energies called the doshas. The doshas are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. The energy of Vata is action, transportation, and movement. So it's made up of space and air. Those two elements come together to form Vata. And each of the doshas is associated with particular qualities. So the qualities associated with Vata dosha are dry, cold, light, irregular, mobile, rarefied, and rough. Pitta dosha is fire and water, which, remember, water includes oil, so we could say water and oil when we're talking about the makeup of a person's constitution. This is the energy of transformation, conversion, and digestion. The qualities associated with Pitta dosha are oily, hot, sharp, light, intense, mobile, and liquid. And then the third dosha listed here is Kapha. Kapha is the earth element with some water. It's the energy of construction, lubrication, nourishment. The qualities are oily, cold, heavy, stable, viscous, dense, and smooth. This is a lot of information, so I'm just laying a very basic foundation so that we can play with these concepts interwoven together. Ayurveda is a vast science that you could study for an entire lifetime or perhaps many lifetimes. Prakriti is the combination of these three doshas that a particular individual was born with. So we all have all three of these doshas within us, but most of us have a stronger of one of these, or perhaps two that are more strong with a third one less present. It's possible to have all three in a similar ratio, but it's not very common. Most of us have a dominant of these energies. Like I mentioned, Ayurveda is a vast science. There's many facets to it. And so for this presentation today, I'm only talking about constitution, the ratio of these energies that an individual was born with. I'm not talking about the state that they're in right now of where there might be imbalance. When it comes to Prakriti, what we're really looking at is patterns. And in Ayurveda, there is a saying that like attracts like and opposites create balance. So when we talk about those qualities and actions of Vata dosha, we're talking about a person that has a lot of the air element. So you can imagine what are some qualities or characteristics of someone with a lot of the air element. It's associated with creativity, with possibility. It's light, quick, energetic. But what happens with quick moving energy? It depletes easily. So this is characteristic of a person with a Vata constitution. So they might have a lot of energy that goes in spurts, but they deplete easily and need a lot of rest to recover from those energetic bursts. Pitta is considered the more middle of the road of these three doshas, like less extreme to one end. The qualities associated are sharp, natural leader, achievement oriented, but they burn out easily. So this is the fire element. A person with a lot of Pitta dosha has a radiance to them, the ability to metabolize things, which includes not only food, but also ideas, which is where that natural leadership can step in. And they can accomplish things more like they have that drive, but it's easy to override the body and burn out with this constitution. There's a pattern of that happening. Again, none of this is set in stone. People don't fit into boxes perfectly. These are just patterns that help us organize and look for potential ways that this energy could be leading to the factors that contribute to certain conflicts. And then we have Kapha dosha, which is earth with a little bit of water. So it's the slowest moving of these three energies. People with a lot of kapha dosha in their constitution in a positive vibration are patient, loyal, stable, and that energy in a lower vibration can be prone to stuckness, like not change the mind very easily or not want to ruffle the routine or change things up. So when Ayurveda uses the phrase like attracts like, opposites create balance, this can go for many things. This is the basis for Ayurvedic medicine when it comes to herbal remedies or diet suggestions. But it's also the basis for many lifestyle factors and recommendations. So for example, a person with a Vata constitution that gets those creative bursts of energy and then is very depleted will really benefit from making sure that they have a grounding routine, whether that's spending time in nature, whether that's drinking, herbal teas that are very grounding, like barks and herbs that like bring the energy to more even keel. Knowing this about yourself or knowing this about your clients means that we can support decisions and lifestyle choices that really are tailored to the individual's needs. Likewise, with a Pitta, we know we have someone that's might have a tendency toward really strong beliefs about achievement, really a sharpness, can often be self-critical, can overwork to the point of burnout. And so the opposites create balance. Usually this type of person, which this is where I fall into the category, really benefits from focusing on surrender, especially things like yoga nidra or practices that support a daily rhythm of soothing and relaxing and letting go. And then finally, with kapha dosha, there's a natural tendency to be patient, loyal, stable, and a natural tendency to perhaps get stuck in their ways and not want to initiate change when change would be really beneficial. And so in general, this type of person benefits from making sure that they get enough movement every day. Like the ancient texts say that a kapha constitution person really needs to break a sweat every single day. And so yes, we all need movement, but the thing is, people that are Vata or Pitta are probably naturally getting a lot of movement. They don't necessarily have to direct their energy to making sure they go for a walk every day or move their body. They usually benefit from making sure that they actually rest and sit down and take time off. Whereas the kapha person, it's not going to be a natural innate tendency to want to move unless they're really imbalanced and have created a practice for themselves. So these are patterns that help us to recognize ourselves, our students, our clients. So how do we determine someone's prakriti? Traditionally in Ayurveda, there is a list. We look at the pulse, the body frame, complexion, hair texture, the shape of the nails, shape of the eyes, the mouth, personality traits like I just mentioned, physical strength and endurance, tendencies like appetite, digestion patterns, evacuation, menstruation. Like I mentioned, every single person has all three doshas within, so we're looking at an overall picture to really see which one is most prominent and dominating to understand someone's constitution. However, there's some exciting things happening in modern science, and I feel like as part of the picture of holistic health, GHK and Ayurveda are kind of there where there's a lot of studies emerging to support it, but we're really at the forefront of what's possible in understanding the human experience. So one study that gets me really excited to see moving forward is this exploration of how to conduct prakriti-based research. So basically, if scientists are trying to discover like what is a pattern, whether it's a pattern of disease, a pattern of a bacteria or whatever, is it happening in a majority of individuals with Vata constitution, Pitta, or Kapha? Well, how do we determine whether someone is Vata, Pitta, or Kapha? Because as we go back to that last list, with pulse and body frame and characteristics, that could be really subjective depending on who's doing the evaluation. And I know I went through this myself when I was first learning Ayurveda. I had to go to a couple different practitioners before I really truly understood my constitution. And that's because when someone is out of balance, sometimes we present in a way that is not true to who we are. And it takes a lot of work to dig deep under the imbalance to really understand what the person was born with or who they're meant to be when they're in harmony. So this type of research, I think, is really exciting. Another type of research that's coming to the forefront is the potential for gut bacteria to support identification in Ayurvedic constitution. And so this research gets me really excited because they're looking at gut bacteria and they're looking for patterns as an Ayurvedic doctor or practitioner assesses a person according to the other things, the pulse, the body shape, all of that, the nails, the eyes, the hair. Then the labs are looking at particular things in the gut microbiome to see if there's a consistent pattern. And as scientists learn more and more, perhaps a pattern will discover, and we'll all be taking stool tests to tell us what our constitution is someday in the future. Who knows? So let's talk about connecting Ayurveda to GHK. I'm going to repeat this again, the sentence that I said earlier. What creates a conflict shock is unique to the individual based on many factors, including but not limited to societal conditioning, family patterns, thought patterns, unique experiences. What we know is that two people can experience the same event. One person's brain might trigger a DHS while the other person handles the experience with ease. One person might experience a DHS that triggers a self-devaluation conflict, while another might have the same exact experience and it will trigger an indigestible morsel conflict. So what I'm really curious is why one person can get away without a DHS and another experiences a DHS. And then from there, two people have similar experiences. One, it goes to the gut, and one, it goes to the bones. Why this matters is because when we resolve a conflict, we're looking at that indigestible morsel piece or that self-devaluation conflict piece, and we're backing up out of that. And so the more we can understand the factors that went into that, the more we can peel the layers back to resolve it. Ayurveda provides a nuanced, holistic perspective on the mind-body of an individual. Ayurvedic psychology provides tools to understand why a person thinks the way they do based on Prakriti, the constitution. Ayurvedic lifestyle practices based on the individual's constitution support a gentle path back to their natural way of being. So what I'm talking about here is that slide where we had Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. We know Vata is quick moving and can be impulsive and therefore really is soothed by daily rhythm and grounding practices. Pitta is sharp and achievement oriented and is really helped out and benefited by practices embedded in a daily routine that encourage letting go and surrendering and softening. And Kapha can get complacent with life and really benefits from having practices in place that get the energy moving. So when we know this about ourselves or our students or our clients, we're able to co-create a daily rhythm and a lifestyle that really supports who we are and starts to create more conditions to be in harmony and to be able to respond to life rather than react. A little bit more about Ayurveda. Agni is digestive fire. Ayurveda teaches that Agni digests everything in life, from the food that we eat, the environment around us, the media that we consume, emotions, relationships, and life situations. So Agni is really all-encompassing. A fun fact, it is the first word in the Rig Veda, Agni. There's a prayer to Agni because fire is life. This is what helps us to metabolize everything that we experience. And so a consideration here is how capable do you feel to emotionally digest your life? And for me, my journey of my own healing and my client work has really taken me on this path to prioritize emotional digestion. In Ayurveda, the ancient texts tell us that there are 3 causes of disease or disharmony, dis-ease. The first, prajnaparada, is failure of the intellect. This is talking about when we get a signal from the body and we choose to ignore it. Our mind consciously overrides that signal. So for example, Ayurveda talks about urges of the body. The body has, it just functions without us having to do anything in so many ways. So when we need to eliminate, if we choose to not go do that because we're wrapped up in our work or we're in a situation where we don't feel like stopping and listening to our body for whatever reason, that's the mind overriding the natural flow and elimination process of the body. And when that is repeated over and over again for a long time, that starts to contribute to reversal of the flow of the way things need to move in the body. This is considered failure of the intellect because the intellect is overriding what is natural for your body. Asatamendriyartha samyoga, misuse of the senses. So if you remember back to Ayurveda as the wisdom or knowledge of life, and life being made up of mind, body, soul, and senses, this is what I think makes Ayurveda really special, this prioritizing of the senses. And basically, to sum it up, we experience, our inner world experiences the outer world through the senses. The senses are our portal for understanding and interacting with the world around us. So whether we're listening to something, whether we're speaking back, we're watching something, looking at something, smelling, touching, this is how we're interacting with the world. Our senses are meant to be cared for, and Ayurveda gives a lot of guidelines on how to care for our senses. For example, if it's particularly windy, Ayurveda would suggest that we cover the ears with a hat or a scarf because that wind is cold and dry. It has the characteristics of Vata dosha, and we don't want that inside our ears going like basically into our heads or our brains. So when we eat foods with a lot of chemical strong taste, we're misusing the senses. When we blast music beyond what's comfortable for our ears, that's an example of misusing the senses. When we spend hours upon hours looking at the glaring lights of a screen and our eyes feel tired and constricted and we don't take a break, that is misuse of the senses. So this is said to cause dis-ease or disharmony over time. Another quick example is that when we're overwhelming like all of the senses at once, if we're eating and music is blasting and someone is talking to us and it's cold, like all of these things are happening to our body, this would be misuse of the senses. And then the final one here is parinama, living out of rhythm. And this is the one I'm going to talk a little bit more about. This one is often described as not living in alignment with the seasons or being affected with conditions such as extreme weather. Ayurveda is all about cyclical living. It's all about tuning into the rhythm of nature and aligning your life with it. So in the obvious way, the way I like to look at this is that the sun rises in the morning and the sun sets in the evening. This is a natural 24-hour circadian rhythm. It is happening regardless of our lifestyle choices. Ayurveda would suggest we rise in the morning, have an active day, wind down the evening, and go to sleep. And in fact, it lays out specific times, waking up by around 6 a.m. and being asleep by 10 p.m. The way I look at this is that sun and the daylight and nighttime cycle is happening whether we work a night shift, whether we stay up all night on our computer, whether we sleep all day. That 24-hour rhythm is happening regardless. The more that we scooch our way into flow with Mother Nature and these rhythms, the more we're not swimming against the current, and the more it just makes life easier. So this is true in a 24-hour day, and science of course tells us that people that work opposite shifts do oftentimes suffer from health consequences. But I want to propose another possible way to view this living out of rhythm. And I want to look at this that a conflict shock, a DHS, breaks the natural rhythm and order in the body. At the moment of a conflict shock, there is a physical reaction in the body. There is a break in the rhythm. Oftentimes, there might be a gasp for air. There might be a constriction, a tightening. And we know that trauma is also described as a break in natural rhythm. In essence, this is what's happening when the body goes into fight, flight, or freeze, right? Our body is naturally moving things through us, whether it's the flow of blood, whether it's the air through the respiratory system. It's doing these things without our effort. This is a natural flow. This is a natural rhythm. At the moment of a conflict shock, there's a stop in some way of this natural flow or this natural rhythm. Either digestion, breath, or some other flow temporarily stops. In the normal process of recovery, we have that moment. The state is temporary. The body processes this disruption, and then we return to homeostasis. Ayurveda is all about rhythm. And the ancient texts describe that most disorders or disease involves vata. And I see this as a very strong connection to be explored. The connection between this DHS, which we could also call a trauma response, a break in a rhythm, and what Ayurveda refers to as vata dosha. And so from this perspective, we can look at restoring rhythm. If we consider the healing modalities that have been used since the beginning of human history, we can look at music, dance, and breath. These things restore our natural rhythm. And if we look at the modalities that are being used in modern times with a lot of evidence to support at least further research or the exploration of these things like EMD, tapping, shaking, grounding, earthing, these are practices that help the physical body restore natural rhythm and order. Ayurveda is in many ways considered to be lifestyle medicine, and in many ways, many think of Ayurveda as preventative. That, the more we have rhythm, the more we build in Ayurveda what is called ojas, like this reservoir of nourishment, so that we're able to respond to life rather than having strong reactions out of our control. Ayurveda promotes that every aspect of your lifestyle connects to the rhythms of nature. So again, in this sense, it's preventative medicine. And in 2017, the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to 2 scientists for their work in explaining biological rhythms. Everyone that works in Ayurveda was so excited, or just kind of knew this was coming, that the Nobel Peace Prize was going to recognize biological rhythms, because this is what the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda has said for, thousands of years. However, having lived with chronic autoimmune condition myself, I can share that I don't believe that a sattvic lifestyle, like a rhythmic lifestyle, is enough to restore equilibrium to the body when there is especially a hanging healing that we have to dig deeper. So I see this as preventative and as nourishment to help, but I think there's more involved here. We have to look at what caused the break in rhythm, that moment of the conflict shock. GHK offers a body of research and proven correlation of particular thought patterns and emotional reactions to a disruption of natural order. So what I see here, a vata pacifying, regulated, grounding lifestyle helps us to regulate our nervous system. It helps us to learn how to work with the nervous system and go through the states. But if we keep disrupting the natural rhythm and order because of conflict, we will stay stuck in a cycle of chronic triggers and reoccurring symptoms. The mind evolved to keep the body alive. And so what I see as a path forward, and what has been my own personal experience in my life of healing from chronic condition, as well as the students that I work with, subconscious programming dictates our behaviors and our reactions. And so when we work with the subconscious programming, then we work with the essence of what's the strongest factor contributing to DHS. So now I want to talk about nuance in doshic imbalance and Ayurveda. Ayurveda offers us a roadmap for understanding the doshas. So it offers us a roadmap for seeing the nuance in Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, understanding what lifestyle factors and even dietary or herbal suggestions are going to be helpful for individuals with particular constitution. It helps us to understand thought patterns. This is the key, I think, to something really powerful. And this is what I've been exploring with my own students and clients, that there is a particular mindset. Of course, people don't fall into boxes. People are individuals. But again, with the burst of energy, with the fiery achievement oriented, with the slower to change, there's patterns according to doshic constitution. GHK correlates a physical symptom to a subconscious belief. So that's where I see potential for such exploration of patterns. So for example, an indigestible morsel is connected to anger, and in Ayurveda, that's connected to Pitta dosha. I mentioned that I wasn't going to dive deeply into this, but I'm just going to briefly share. We have our constitution, our prakriti that we were born with. So we're likely stronger of one of these three, or maybe two are kind of equal as the strongest, with the third trailing behind. And then we have the state that we're in right now. So this can be because of many factors, and I'll just give one brief, simple example. Someone could be born with a Kapha institution, a little slower style of life, a little more content in life. But they could be in a Pitta phase of life. For example, they could be in college, or they could be working their way up the corporate ladder. So the fire is there, even though that's not really innately who they are at all times. So I just want to point that out so that we don't get stuck in any sort of boxed thinking about this, that there's always nuance, there's always unseen factors involved, as you know. But what I am proposing is that how you digest your life has a certain flavor to it based on you, the individual. And you can gather clues on your uniqueness through Ayurveda and Ayurveda's sister science, Jyotish, which is Vedic astrology. It looks at your birth chart and maps out some other patterns that might be really present in your life. So some simple weavings of Ayurveda and GHK. The idea here is that we return to rhythm in order to create a pathway to homeostasis. We can learn about individual patterns through the 5 elements and the 3 doshas, and this offers insight to why you think the way you do, or why your client thinks the way they do. And how we do this is we consider the qualities associated with the doshas and work with the opposite for balance. So for example, if someone is a Vata constitution, they're likely very mobile. That means they move around a lot. They change their mind frequently. They're, the kind of person that's like always doing different things. And therefore the opposite quality is going to be stability and groundedness. And when you know this about yourself, you can start to prepare for it, basically, and have a plan of action for when you find yourself getting lost in the ethers. A Pitta person can be very sharp. So the opposite would be soft. A way to look at this is that when it comes to conflict, like let's go back to that indigestible morsel conflict, When you really understand yourself and you understand that maybe I have a tendency towards sharpness, maybe my pattern in the way that I'm viewing the world has this, in the positive aspect, the high vibration of sharpness is I can page through a lot of information. I can get to the main point. I can, really understand the idea of something. I can read a book very quickly. That's sharpness. But in my relationships, because all conflicts have mostly to do with relationships, right? My relationship with my coworker, my relationship with this family member that keeps on triggering me, there's the potential here to look at these Gurvati gunas, that's the word in Sanskrit for these list of qualities that match up to each of the doshas, and understand like, oh, me as a Pitta individual, I have a tendency towards sharpness, which is very beneficial for me in many ways, especially like in career and leadership. And maybe I bring that sharpness to my relationships, and that is coloring these situations that are very triggering to me. And it really gives something juicy to work with. Likewise, one of the qualities that's associated with kapha dosha is that heaviness. And so if someone has a kapha constitution, it is possible that they can really get stuck with the belief that they're ready to outgrow. And if they know that they're the type of person, then, as the support for this type of person, really explaining this and helping them to co-create a plan that involves action and change, and encouraging them of this medicine of opposites. So I'm not saying that working with the doshas and these qualities will necessarily resolve a conflict at all, because a lot of these things are going to be self-reflection, lifestyle practices. And like I mentioned, I see a pattern that, conflicts have to do with other people. And so there needs to be a closing of the loop in some way with the conflict involving another person. But what I do think is possible is that when we work with our own qualities and learn how to really support ourselves, we feel more at ease and new pathways of possibility open up. And it might help us to think or feel differently in conjunction with other work like therapy. So in this example of a Pitta person recognizing sharpness, maybe there's a possibility to soften in our conversations, or perhaps maybe there's a possibility to recognize, like, you know what, you're right, I'm very achievement oriented. Maybe I'm not the best at having difficult conversations. And so now I can seek out relationship advice, or I can seek out family counseling or something like that I might have been closed to in the past. Another thing about understanding doshic constitution that I think is really beneficial is it helps us to understand how someone else thinks. So, for example, that sharp mind really likes scientific evidence, where the kapha mind likely is more willing to listen or be open to possibility if it has to do with relationships. So there's just these patterns of how the qualities and how the elements show up give us clues on how to relate to people. So with this combination of Ayurveda and GHK, we can look for emotional patterns, especially when it comes to hanging healings and more complicated situations. So in summary, Ayurveda is rooted in a deep connection between nature, rhythm, and the divine as the path to thriving as a human. GHK offers a roadmap for how specific biological conflicts break natural order and rhythm. And by overlaying these two maps, we get a more precise understanding of the relationship between trauma, subconscious patterns, physical symptoms. I see awareness and acceptance as the first two steps on the path to resolution. Daily rhythm and Agni, digestive fire, which includes digesting life and emotions, are important pillars for support as we resolve biological conflicts and become more adept to process breaks in rhythm as they occur in the future, right? So isn't that the point of the biological point of a conflict shock, is that we rebuild and we're stronger in the future? So I hope that this has been helpful for you in considering how Ayurveda might pair with Germanic Healing Knowledge. Again, I'm Angela at Simple Ayurveda, and this is the work that I do with wellness practitioners that either are well versed in Ayurveda and want to add Germanic healing knowledge to their body of work, or whether you're someone that is deep in GHK and you're curious to weave more of Ayurveda. And so this is what I do in small groups. And I want to just share with you two emails I got recently from the students that wrapped up in a recent cohort. From a wellness practitioner, I just wanted to say again how grateful I am to have decided to take your class at the last minute. It was an emotional experience for me, but something I needed to do to come through the liminal space and into complete healing on the other side. I can honestly say that I'm healed from my trauma and shock and have completely accepted our situation as a family. There is no trace left of sadness, fear, or guilt, and I no longer feel the need to know why. Like we talked about many times in class, surrender to what is and just love. That is the solution to almost anything I found. I have found that emotional freedom. This one, it just really brings this is why I am so passionate about these topics, and I'm also really passionate about helping students or clients to understand themselves more deeply, to be less reliant on a practitioner to tell them how to resolve something, and instead really understand who they are so that they're able to take the tools and modalities that we share and make it their own and choose what is truly most impactful for them. And one other student recently wrote, "Thank you so much for your thoughtful, wise counsel. Your sage perspective that it's not necessarily the teachings or tools themselves, but rather the lessons we learn through our own lens and discernment that helps us grow and heal. I very much appreciate your balanced, non-rigid approach to letting the lessons unfold by listening to ourselves. Thank you again." So this is, I believe, the pathway forward for all of us in the wellness world in whatever form it is that we work and support others, that we're really just holding the mirror for others to understand themselves more deeply and come to the resolution themselves. And we just offer ideas or suggestions based on deeply understanding the person and the way that they work. So again, thank you so much for listening and being open to this weaving of Ayurveda and GHK. I appreciate you so much, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.